welcome to Eye on Horror, the official podcast of iHorror.com. This is episode 73, otherwise known as season 4, episode 16. I am your host, James J. Edwards, and with me, as always, is your other host, Jacob Davison. How you doing, Jacob?
I'm fine. Fine like wine.
I thought we were just going to get the single word "fine" out of you, but you went the extra mile. Also with us is your other host, John Correa. How you doing, Correa?
I'm doing great. That was
awkward.
That was one of the least convincing. I'm fine, but you stuck the landing with the fine like wine. I am absolutely convinced that you are doing fantastic now.
I was watching Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and this is something Meat Watts said. I don't know. I thought it'd be funny.
No, it's great. We're back to recording early in the morning again, so I think we're all a bit dead inside.
No, I'm still waking up.
And also with us, you probably have heard him laughing already. So we're going to bring him in right now. We have back. This is technically the three-peat, but I think that we've had a couple false starts. This is probably like his 5th appearance. Waylon Jordan. How you doing, Waylon?
I'm great and always excited to be here with you guys.
Welcome back.
Always excited to have you. Now you and Kelly, I think, are tied for being three guests, although you do have those 2 false starts, so you're more experienced, I think.
Oh, I definitely think I get more credit for being here more times. Whether those times actually made it to where people heard them or not, I was here. So.
Yeah, you've seen us at our worst because with technical difficulties. What have you guys been watching? Have we all seen Candyman?
I've seen Candyman.
I have not gotten to see it yet.
We'll try not to spoil it, but the 3 of us are going to talk about Candyman.
Well, also, we almost said it 4 times just then. So, so it's almost good that Waylon hasn't seen it because we go.
Oh, come on. Candyman. There we go. We're all set.
No. What did you guys think?
I thought it was great.
I did too.
I did. I wasn't 100% sure what to expect, even with, trailers and commercials going in. But I thought, and this isn't really much of a spoiler, I thought it was a great continuation of the series.
It's weird because it is a sequel. It's a continuation, but it's pretty much the same plot as the first one, except you have an artist instead of a grad student, but it's, someone researching the myth. But the thing is, they go over, it's a sequel because they go over the story of Helen from the first one, and it's part of the mythology now. So I thought it was really great how they handled that.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was very fantastic. Especially since it didn't feel like, with Halloween 2018, it felt like we're cutting off all the sequels and stuff. It felt like it was just a continuation of the story that started with the first film. But it didn't neglect what happened with the sequels. Hey, some people like the sequels. I had fun with, Farewell to the Flesh,
Farewell to the Flesh is really good, though. I actually think Farewell to the Flesh is
I thought that one was solid. Joint. I still haven't seen Day of the Dead. I do have a German Blu-ray coming in soon for it. Because, I like to abuse myself by dropping $25 on sci-fi sequels. But no, I thought it was fantastically done. The acting was phenomenal. A lot of the cinematography was very simple, but very effective.
Lots of mirrors. And I loved how they used the mirrors. So brilliant.
Even just that opening.
Or that elevator scene where all of the elevator walls are mirrors. You're like, dude, insane.
Oh, dude. As soon as the first appearance of Candyman happened through mirrors, Lindsay and I saw it at the drive-in. We can talk. I turned around, I was like, fuck, we're going to have to look at mirrors all the time. And sure enough, just every scene there was a mirror. I'm like, where is it?
And I just love the detail. Sometimes you're seeing or hearing bees and they're coming from inside the mirror.
Yeah. That was really
done. Creepy. And just great mirror cinematography. And this is going to sound weird. It kind of reminded me of Poltergeist 3 because there was so much mirror effects in that particular movie.
Which Poltergeist 3 slaps.
Yeah, and that shit was in camera.
Yeah. Poltergeist 3 kills. That was the first movie to scare the shit out of me as a kid. So
that movie gets so much hell, but it really is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's that big high-rise building and everything.
Chicago.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. And yeah, again, Chicago. What's going on in Chicago, guys?
Chicago, the Windy City. You guys got a lot of spooky shit happening. But I do want to take a quick moment to address people who are like, oh, why did Candyman have to be so political? Just one question. Have you seen a Candyman before? Like, for fuck's sake, do you know anything about his origins? Like, come on. Like, it's embedded in it.
I actually thought that this one dialed back the socio-political commentary. I mean, it was clearly there and they talked about it, but in the end, it didn't distract from it being a balls out slasher.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, I was a little confused that people are like, oh, I'm through with Candyman. It's like, well, you know, yeah, this is your first Candyman because all of them.
All of them.
Yeah.
Well, all of them have that in it. And so many people, I don't know how they get through life. I don't know how they watch movies, you know, and don't pick up on things. I mean, maybe they saw it when they were younger and they just, you know, never revisited it and they were too young to get it the first time around. That's a possibility. But yeah, of all the slasher films, Candyman, I mean, it was there from the beginning and it was like right up front, you know, even in the way they changed it from the source material, from the way that the story was written by Clive Barker. You know, it took place in England and it was this pale, pasty white guy with blonde hair and, you know, and then they took it to Chicago and with just from the setting and everything else they did. This film was political from the beginning. This franchise was.
Oh yeah, although I feel like a lot of these takes are disingenuous and are just a way to drive outrage clicks online.
Totally.
I knew as soon as Candyman was going to be out, like there was going to be all these outrage videos about Candyman going woke or so SJW or whatever, and you know it's totally out there. It's a grift.
That's just one of the funniest things I've heard all morning. Candyman being woke, like a woke Candyman. Like that's just such a silly thing to even like say, like to actually believe in. Oh, I can't believe Candyman's woke now. It's like, what?
Now?
Where have you been?
Plus, you have Jordan Peele producing it and Nia Dacosta directing.
Yeah.
What did you expect it?
I'm so excited for her career.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait to see what she does next. Just from what I've heard about this particular film, I can't wait to see what she does next.
I believe she's doing the new Captain Marvel movie. Marvels.
The Marvels. Yeah. Very excited. Also, and I'm going to say this because I was saying it a lot when I was watching HBO's Watchmen, but the lead, Yahya Abdul-Mateen, the main reason why we had to see it at the drive-in, one, still not entirely comfortable with theaters, but also I knew that while watching Candyman, I would turn to Lindsay and go, I know we came to see Candyman, but I wasn't expecting so much man candy. Seriously, that dude, like when he came up in Watchmen, I was like, holy shit, who's this guy? Fuck. So there was a lot of that happening during it. But his character was very interesting as Anthony in the new Candyman because he's the protagonist, but he's not necessarily a great guy. He's kind of a dick. And I really enjoy that in movies when you don't have like an extreme good person. Like there's a lot of conflict.
A clear-cut protagonist.
Yeah.
Helen in the first Candyman was kind of a bitch too.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's even called out on putting like her thesis above the actual people of Cabrini Green.
And that was what was interesting with her, especially when the accusations are going towards you're murdering these people, because she's not a good person, but she's not bad enough to murder, you know? And so it is one of those things where it's like, well, she's not a great person, so I guess she could murder. And it's like, well, how are all of you in this movie making those very up until like when the best friend gets murdered in the first one? Then it's like, okay, the evidence is very strong. Although, she did kill the dog, or she was there covered in blood in that person's apartment. Man, Candyman made a really good case in that first movie of Helen murdering a lot of people. Like he made that evidence very clear.
All right, let's move on. I saw something last night that I don't want to talk too much about because we already did, but I saw the Suicide Squad. And
nice.
Oh, yeah.
The reason I actually watched the Suicide Squad is because it's leaving HBO Max today. So I was like, okay, I procrastinated enough. I know it's not supposed to be a comedy, but I could not stop laughing through that whole movie. It's Jacob nailed it. It is a high budget trauma movie, and it's so much fun. Yeah, just that opening scene where like you I don't want to spoil anything, but it is the opening scene where basically like all these people you think are main characters are not.
Oh, yeah. Suicide Squad. A lot of them are going to die.
Yeah.
And as soon as they let you know what TDK stands for, I just about lost it. Like,
Yeah.
what?
Oh yeah. Yeah, like the most useless superpower of all time. But you know,
awesome.
hey.
Yeah. No, that was definitely played for comedy.
You know, it was really funny to me. I turned to my husband when we started watching that. I turned to Bill and I was like, this is like X Factor and Deadpool 2. Like, that's what I'm feeling right here.
Yeah.
Like before it all even went down, like they're all coming in and everything. And I was like, I'm getting real X Factor Deadpool 2 vibes here. X-Force. Yeah. X-Force.
Without the Brad Pitt.
Right.
Which I think is genius. If you're going to Brad Pitt in your movie, they show him for like 2 frames max. Just enough to register that that's Brad Pitt.
Instead, we got something better, and that was Pete Davidson's character not lasting more than a minute.
And he got killed being a scumbag too. That was the best part.
Now, just to get another one out of the way, because you guys saw it and talked about it, but I had The Green Knight was fucking phenomenal. That was worth dropping $20 on a digital rental for me, at least. I loved how it played out just like an ancient epic poem. Like I was sitting there, I was like, this is playing out like if someone just did like a straight up adaptation of the Epic of Gilgamesh or type, you know, just its pacing, its characters, everything. It was very true. And I liked how, again, broken protagonist, that guy could not do anything right the entire movie. And it was just him fucking up left and right. And I loved it. I'm tired of boring do-gooders. Give me more broken protagonists, please. But yeah, Green Knight was phenomenal.
And on new releases, I just saw this new horror movie on Shudder called Superhost. Have either of you guys seen that?
That thing is buck wild.
Oh yeah, yeah. Isn't it though?
Is it a sequel to Host?
No. It's a couple of travel vloggers, and they go to this place, and they're like, you know, talking about, you know, super hosts, these, you know, these awesome hosts and these sort of like Airbnb type places. But it just really just spins completely out of control with their host.
Yeah, I was going to say their host is this woman named Rebecca, played by Grace Phipps, who, you know, she's like extremely quirky, has real Ann Wilkes vibes, but she flips her emotions at the drop of a hat. And she is definitely one of the highlights of the movie. It just like just really kind of steals the scenes every time she shows up. Also has some great bits with Barbara Crampton as like the bitter former super host on their show. Like they apparently gave her a bad rating, and she's so mad at them that she tracked them down.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, the superhost, I also got real like Aubrey Plaza vibes off of her. Like I kept thinking like this would have been a great role for her too. Like it's just that kind of character. But yeah, if you guys get a chance to watch that one, it's so much fun. Just so much fun to watch.
Yep, it's on Shudder.
I'll jump in and say it took me a while, but I finally got around to seeing Werewolves Within.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Man, did I have fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is it one of your favorites of the year?
Oh, without a doubt. Like it's just so, and you know, I started to watch it a while ago and got into it, and then like had to stop, and I was like, I need to finish this movie. So I finally got to go back and actually fully see it all the way through. And man, what a movie. I had so much fun. That ending was killer.
Oh yeah.
That movie actually recently inspired me to finally watch Murder by Death, because I was like, man, I need to watch another
what a great movie.
I need another whodunit. And I got like halfway through it because, man, as everyone was firing on all cylinders, especially Peter Falk, Columbo, funniest person in that movie. But Peter Sellers as Dr. Wang was oh, that just was killing the movie so bad. And everyone's so good in it except for that. And it's just the most like hard. It's not quite Breakfast at Tiffany's of like racial stereotypes of Asians, but it's like just slightly less than that. But like,
but at the same time, the whole point was to kind of poke fun at all of that because of all the Charlie Chan movies that came out in like the 40s and stuff, and all the terrible things that were done in there. But yeah, it is a really fine line, and it stepped on both sides of that line several times throughout.
Yeah, there was some funny bits with that though, of him being like, no, that's my adoptive son. I laughed at that, but
yeah,
I had to take a break. I was like, oh man, this is a bit much for right now. I'll definitely finish it soon, but like, ooh.
Yeah. Oh, and in terms of repertory screenings, I just saw for the first time David Lynch's Lost Highway. And oh man, I have no idea where I am.
I was about to say, do you have thoughts? Can you put them together after that?
Dick Lauren is dead.
See, I've never watched Lost Highway. I've owned it on DVD for 12 years now.
And never put it in the DVD player.
Like, don't get me wrong, I love David Lynch. I want to watch Lost Highway. It's just every time I go to watch a movie and I see that DVD case, I go, am I in the mood for this? I don't know if I'm in the mood.
He went through a period with like Lost Highway and Inland Empire where I don't even know if he knew what he was doing.
Oh yeah, it's entirely possible that he didn't.
I mean, he knew what he was doing, but I don't think he knew where he was going.
I mean, it was a very entertaining movie with an astounding cast, like particularly Robert Loggia was both hilarious and terrifying.
I can't hear the name Robert Loggia without thinking of that Family Guy where
I was about to say I went to the exact same place. Yeah, Robert Loggia.
Yeah. It's like being stuck behind Robert Loggia in line.
Well, I think that's probably related to the joke, because in Lost Highway there's like a guy tailgates Robert Loggia's character who's kind of like this crime lord boss or whatever, and so he just like rails this guy off the road with his car and just beats the shit out of him. And the funniest part to me though is I later looked it up, and on two fronts. For one, Robert Loggia got the role for Mr. Eddie in Lost Highway because he had originally waited several hours to try out for the role of Frank Booth in Blue Velvet, and then like just sweared the hell out of David Lynch when he wasn't told about it. So Lynch promised him a role in another movie. And also, apparently that scene was based off of David Lynch getting so mad that somebody was tailgating him, and that's what he wanted to do to the guy who was tailgating him. Like, David Lynch hates tailgaters with a passion. So never, ever tailgate David Lynch, or he will destroy you.
Yeah.
Good to know. Good to know.
That's one of the things I avoid in life, is that and people who think dolphins have mystical powers.
Cool. What else you guys been seeing?
When we saw Candyman at the drive-in, they double featured it with Escape Room, championships,
Tournament of Champions,
tournaments of champions. So we took that as an opportunity. The night prior, we watched the first Escape Room and Candyman, and then the next day watched the new Candyman and Escape Room. So it was a double feature. And so I've never seen the Escape Room movies before, and I got to applaud. They always have one set piece that blowed me away. In the first film, it was the upside down bar, and in the second film, it was the whole bank scene. I really dug that.
That bank is gorgeous. That Art Deco bank was incredible,
and the play out of it was great. But I gotta say, not a big fan of like Saw-esque movies. I'm not even a big fan of Saw movies, to be honest. And I'm definitely not a fan of escape rooms. So those movies were not really made for me. But I did really enjoy, like, especially like during the bank, like when they got really into, and I feel like they did a better job in the sequel of incorporating more escape room rules, where it's like, okay, we got to find this clue, and this clue means this. The first movie, it felt like, all right, I don't know if these clues actually really are clues that really fit together or allude to something, but I feel like they went more hardcore with that, so that was fun. But yeah, I see the appeal of them. They just weren't for me. I do want to shout out to Tournament of Champions for casting India in it.
Oh yeah,
And I really dug that they were just a character. They were just another person who was caught in it. And having a non-binary trans actor in a movie where, you know, their character motivation isn't being driven by trauma or anything, or just being spending all the time. They were just another person who was caught up in a fucked up situation. I thought was really great. So
yeah, that was really beautifully done, and they did a damn good job in the film. So, you know, I had a lot of fun watching for that specific reason, because I wanted to see how it was handled. And I thought Adam and the people on the film would like do a good job with that, but you just never know. You never can tell. Yeah. So you have to, you know.
I definitely was like, because I just watched all of Pose in like a week or two. So I was definitely on you better do them justice. You better do them justice. And they did. I thought that was great. So yeah, I had fun with them. But I think it's a bit of a Happy Death Day situation where I'm like, these films were not made for me. And that's cool. I'm glad that they have an audience, and I do hope they keep making them because they seem like a lot of fun.
And in terms of new Blu-ray releases, I recently got the Unearthed Films Blu-ray of Evil Dead Trap. Have any of you guys seen that one?
No, but I just got my copy in too.
Oh, yeah, no. I've been a fan of it for a while just because it is, well, it's very different from the usual kind of J-horror stuff, especially from the 80s, because it's one of those things where, like, around that time is mostly ghosts. So
is that the one where it's basically like an Evil Dead ripoff, but with a really muscular?
Oh, no. That's bodybuilder muscle hell, or, well, Japanese Evil Dead. But this was actually more influenced by like slashers and giallos.
Okay.
And yeah, so it's basically like this news reporter gets these snuff films in the mail, and instead of calling the cops, though, she takes her news team to investigate, and they go to this abandoned American military base, and they start getting picked off one by one in like these traps. Like there's like giant spikes that come out of the walls, and at one point there's like a new scarab that comes out of nowhere, and there's this weird dude in a slicker going around. So it's just got all these weird elements, and also got like also has a great synth soundtrack that was definitely Goblin inspired. It's just always interesting when like another style of movie from outside of a country influences to create a movie within another country. So like this is a Japanese kind of take on slasher and giallo. And it's very effective, especially because it goes to some wild places that I don't want to spoil.
Let's move on to talking about Waylon, because Waylon's got
to talk about me.
That's why you're here. You have some cool stuff that's happening right now, and we want to talk about it. The main thing that we brought you on to talk about is your new novella, The Stop, which is it's out now. You can get it like Amazon.
Yes. You can get it on Amazon for Kindle and also paperbacks. It's available there. I have been looking into trying to get it on more digital services. I haven't been able to do that yet. And the audiobook has also just gone into production. So there will be an audiobook forthcoming of The Stop.
Awesome.
Give us the elevator pitch for The Stop.
In The Stop, I take you back to 1996. It was a very different time in the gay community, and especially for gay men. It was before we had like even Craigslist or Yahoo, personals and things like that. And, we certainly didn't have anything as instantaneous as Grindr. So if you wanted to meet people and you were from some small little town, out in the middle of nowhere, East Texas, you had to know where to go. And basically these cruising spots just sort of cropped up here and there. And the story takes place, this young guy named Donnie just sort of coming into his identity and figuring out who he is, goes out and meets this guy at a cruising spot that they call The Stop. It's a little rest area on the side of the road, and they really hit it off. And after a month or so, he gets up the nerve to ask him out on a date. But when he goes to pick him up for the date, he discovers Nate's body. He has been murdered, and things just kind of spiral from there. Reading The Stop, I want to know your influences for it, but I also want to know if I'm on target with what I think they were, or
one of them.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, please.
I was getting a huge cruising vibe from it.
There is definitely, I mean, it's hard not to have that vibe, you know, and not to have that comparison. I'm really pleased that I did something good enough to have that comparison, because, you know, you just never know when you put it out if people are going to like make that leap. I'll tell you how the story came about. I was up late one night. I was listening to the audiobook of The Queer Bible. It's a series of essays that members of the queer community wrote about other members of the queer community that like influenced them, like famous, you know, people. And the first essay was about George Michael, and it was about, you know, everything that George Michael went through and what it meant to this person who was sitting and watching George Michael go through all of what he went through, you know, with being basically, it was entrapment in a bathroom, you know. I mean, it was straight up entrapment. And it just, you know, I started sort of reminiscing and got really nostalgic about all the crazy stuff we used to do, you know, back in the 90s. And the thought occurred to me, you know, it's a wonder more of us didn't end up murdered. And literally just that thought, I had the main character, I had the killer, I had you know, a good 3/4 of the story in my head, and it just sort of took over my writing life until I could get the story down on paper. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that this story, the way I first wrote it, was much, much shorter. It was basically a short story. And I sent it out to my beta readers, and everybody came back and said, first of all, I think this is actually a movie. And second of all, I need to know more. I need to know more about these characters, and I need to know more about the story. So even though it kind of felt like I was completely emotionally wrung out from writing the short story version of it, I went into it and started looking for ways to expand it. So that's how I got to the version of the novella that we have now.
That was the first thing I had thought of when reading it. And I don't know if it's just because you're a visual writer or what, but I kept picturing it as a movie as well. So I do think you should make it into a movie.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm almost halfway through it right now, and I keep like visualizing it like a Brian De Palma film. Like the characters that are there, they're very well fleshed out, but they're weird and complicated. Some aren't like completely evil, some are completely good. There's like I felt I could definitely see like a lot of visual stuff that like is in a De Palma film, you know, like especially like you and I were talking about before we started recording. There's a scene between Donnie and the sheriff, and I'm seeing all those like that classic De Palma angle where both people are in focus, but one's at the other end of the room and one's at the forefront, you know?
Yeah.
And I was wanting to ask, like, how would you define like the particular genre of this story?
You know, I had trouble with that. I had to wait until I started getting some reviews in, because I was even having some trouble sort of defining what it was. The thing that people seem to most latch onto is revenge noir and thriller. It is very grounded in reality. There is a slight sort of maybe not supernatural element to it, but it's so vague, and it's so, you never really know, and the characters never really know. So, but it is very reality grounded. It's very much a mystery thriller with a heavy dose of revenge noir in it. And it's very much a Texas story. I set it in the town where I live. Like the names of the towns, everything in there as far as a location goes is a real town.
Is the stop real?
The stop was real. The stop was demolished due to a highway project in the last 4 years or so.
Highway project.
Yeah.
Korea just did air quotes.
They expanded the highway and took out the rest stop, but it was a real place, and that's what it was used for. Much like there's, all of those places are real. I'll just say all of those places are real. Now, like there's a Catholic church in it. and that Catholic Church exists, but I changed the name of the Catholic Church. And I've never actually been in there, so I just made up what it looks like on the inside. But that Catholic Church is exactly where I say it is in the book, right next to the university and all of that. So yeah, it's very much a reality-based Texas story.
One of the things that is definitely that I'm really enjoying is, how purposeful are you about touch with this? Because it seems to be a very big common occurrence description of touch. There's little moments where that seems more intimate than a lot of the things. You get very explicit, Waylon. You get very explicit.
Well, I do. But, that's the environment, that's the environment. That's where they're meeting, and that's what they're meeting for.
Right. Oh, it's totally appropriate for the subject matter, but I find it very interesting that you have these very explicit descriptions going on about these, but the moments that are more intimate are the small moments with small moments of touch. There's one where people are in a Walmart and they just happen to touch each other, passing a receipt, and you even say what that touch means. And that's one thing that's like really drawing me in is, wow, first of all, we just had like a very, very graphic description of what happens in the woods. And then yet, there's more going on with this touch.
And I think that part of what I was leaning into, and it was very intentional. I think that in a lot of narratives, and especially narratives that have been written by straight writers about the gay community, especially gay men, there's very little intimacy. There is a lot of screwing and there's a lot of sex, and it's all very salacious, but there's very little about intimacy. And so I put these moments in there to show that there is emotional quotient to what's going on, and there's also emotional value to the relationships that are being created, even if they're being created based in this place where sex is sex is the reason for being there. Yeah. That kind of connection. So yeah. So that scene that you're talking about, passing the receipt, is one of my favorite things in the book, just because it is a moment that shows, when you learn to communicate without words because you can't say certain things out loud, like touching a hand can be one of the most potent things in the world. And so having that connection, it's one of my favorite scenes in the book.
Yeah, no, it definitely left a mark on me. And one of the things that I really like as a, cis straight man who grew up in the woods of New Hampshire, so I had very little exposure to anything outside of that type of experience. You explain things very well when it comes to like stuff like what a stop is, why are people here, what can one gain from here, what can one give here. But at no point does it feel like you're over explaining. You're not talking down to the audience when going over this, and nor are you just expecting us to know. Like, I'm picking up stuff like very quickly. Oh, that's why. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it's sort of a passing on of an FAQ almost. I didn't want everything to be really drawn out discussion of things. I wanted to give you what you needed, so that the narrative of the story continued without dragging things down. Because I love, some of my favorite authors are very descriptive. I love Anne Rice. I love Stephen King, but there are times when I'm like, could we get on with this now? Because like, you're really, really dragging me down. And I didn't want, I had a pace in mind for this story, and I did not want to sacrifice pace, but I knew that there were certain things that I would have to explain.
Yeah. It's a very good balance, because we're picking up those details on what these things are while the actions are happening, while, character development is happening. And I appreciate that, because, I'm still just a simple, woodsman bumpkin who wanders around and doesn't entirely know what's going on. So
simple woodsman bumpkin, I don't think are three things that you will ever really be, John.
I said sometimes. But and it is also interesting reading some of this, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know woods like that. It's kind of like the woods I grew up in. If I stumbled upon that would have shocked me. I'll tell you what.
Well, and one of the other things, and I'll just ask, James, you've actually finished the book, but you're reading right now, John, and I don't know, Jacob, have you had a chance to read yet?
I don't think I got it.
Oh, okay. I will make sure you get a copy, my friend. One of the things that I also included are Donnie is a big reader, and he's always got a book with him when he goes out to like sit at the stop, and those book titles are very intentional. So like if you want glimpses into what's going on in his mind, if you want glimpses into maybe more about the situation, I would say pay close attention to the books that he's reading at various points in the novel or in the novella.
Waylon, I noticed that with the first book title, you weren't exactly being subtle when the first book he's reading is Stephen King's Needful Things.
Yep. We're going out to make a deal with the devil here.
And I was going to ask, why 1996?
96 for me was sort of a transformative year. I was not out yet. I wasn't taking part. I wasn't going out to the rest stops. I wasn't doing any of that stuff. But 1996, I was starting college. I was beginning to understand that there was a world outside of the world that I was raised in. And this story felt like it needed to be told in the 90s. 96 just felt like a good time. It was a time in my mind that I was like, this is a story that I could really tell. And it's a story that I lived, but in a way, there are aspects that I lived. I certainly didn't get involved in a murder.
Not that you would admit it on, a recording.
No, not at all. I'm an innocent person. I mean, y'all can see my halo.
You mean this isn't the immunity portion of the podcast?
But no, it just felt like this was a story that really felt late 90s to me. There were so many interesting things going on in the world and so many changes that were going on in the world that this felt like the time to tell that story. I was mentioning before we got started that I have two other books sort of planned in this same vein. And one will take place like 25, 30 years before this book, and one will take place about 25 or so years after this book. Different generations of gay men, different generations of people going through different things and having different challenges for connection, but also building it around this sort of thriller vibe. So yeah, the time was very specific for me and my own personal experience.
I think what you had said earlier about how back in the 90s, there was no, not even Craigslist, let alone Grindr.
Right.
So I think that gives you a lot of fun places to go when you do that modern one, as well as the more primitive of the 60s. The 60s were there even rest stops that were doing that.
Well, there were places that you could go in the 60s. It was different. You were much more likely, depending on the part of the world that you were in, you were much more likely to find some little dive bar down an alleyway that may or may not have like an awning over the door that you just have to know the password to get in, that kind of thing. It really depends. It depends on where you were. A friend of mine, as a gift for me for the publishing of this book, sent me a book that goes into what was going on at the piers in New York at the time and certain during the 60s, and meetings and this whole society that grew up around gay men meeting down on the pier and where they would go and what happened to them. So that's certainly playing into how I'm sort of plotting out some of this other book in my head, just some things that I'm thinking about.
Yeah. The peers were a big part in Pose too.
Yeah.
For a lot of LGBTQ. That was 80s though. So I definitely would be interested in seeing like what that transition from like how it was in the 60s to the 80s and stuff, you know?
There are actually a couple of old movies. I will have to go find the titles, but I don't remember them off the top of my head, but they were made in the late 60s that sort of dealt with some of that culture as well. So I will have to get those titles to you because they're interesting films.
Definitely. I got the week off, so I need title recommendations.
Now, speaking of making books into movies, another one of yours, it's a short story in an anthology.
Yeah.
Worst Laid Plans. And your story is it called Deep in the Heart? Is that just Deep in the Heart?
Yes.
Okay. Deep in the Heart. Not, I always want to put the of Texas. Deep in the Heart of Texas. Deep in the Heart.
Like in Pee-wee?
Yes.
Your story was selected as one to be made into the anthology film. How did that come about?
Well, you want to talk about the biggest surprise of your life. First of all, that story was another one that wrote itself very, very quickly. There were a lot of edits after the first round, but that story wrote itself very quickly. And it's about a young man who's on a vacation trip with his parents, and they go down into a cave in South Texas, because that's a thing we do here, is go on these cave tours. And, one of the things that happens down in caves is that the wildlife that exists elsewhere mutates to sort of, fit its new environment. And I remember seeing blind catfish while we were down there and on one of these tours. And then the thought of it was, what if those blind catfish further evolved so that they were big enough to crawl out of the water and eat people? So that was kind of where the story grew from. And I wrote this story. It was chosen. It was put in the anthology. And I was super excited to be in with some really talented authors. To be on the same table of contents as some of these authors was just, that was the blessing in itself. And then a couple of months later, the editor of that anthology messaged me and said, Waylon, I really need to have a conversation with you. Can I call you this afternoon? And I was like, oh, crap, what happened?
This is either really good or really bad.
Right. And she called me and she said, hey, we're going to make an anthology film based on Worst Laid Plans. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And she said, and we have a director that wants to adapt your story. And I was like, has he read it? Because that's going to take budget.
I was going to say it is a very cinematic. I mean, kind of like The Stop. I mean, I can see it as a movie, but you're right. It's a creature feature. So there's some effects in there.
Yeah. And I was like, are you my story? Are you sure? And she was like, oh yeah, this is a guy who loves to make creatures. He loves to build, actual physical props and stuff, and loves to work with stuff like that. And he read your story and he loves it and he wants to make a film out of it. And she said, but I need your permission to move ahead with it. And I was like, why are you asking me a dumb question? Make the film.
Who's the director?
Yeah, the director is John Hale. He lives in West Virginia. He is actually an Emmy winner, which shocked me. I had no idea that, I started researching him after she told me who it was. And I was like, holy crap, this guy won an Emmy, And but he loves creature features. He loves monster movies. This is his jam. And he made some changes to the story. He actually wrote the script. He aged up the main character, because in my story, the main character is 12 years old. And he was like, I think it would work better for the film if we made him older. And I was like, go ahead. I said, you can do anything to this character that you want to, except make him straight, because it is important to me that he is a central gay character. And he was like, I won't touch that at all.
Why is it important that character be gay? Because the thing is, in The Stop, it's a central character point and it's vital to the plot. But I didn't think in Deep in the Heart that it was. I could see that kid as being straight and it wouldn't affect the story at all.
It wouldn't necessarily affect the story, but it's become my sort of mission, the more I write to have that representation there. That yeah, and it doesn't have to be a reason, there doesn't have that we get the question a lot when we're talking about putting a gay character into something. Producers, editors, other people will ask you, why does this character need to be gay? And a lot of it is, why does that have to exist in this story? It has to exist in the story because I'm writing it and I want it there, but also because I never had people to look up to when I was growing up. Representation was few and far between. So I want to provide representation for the kid that's growing up in East Texas that doesn't have that representation. So it's just, I write this character for this reason and I put this part of this character into it. But also, a big part of the story is about sort of embracing who you are and sort of stepping up to the plate, even when you're terrified to do so. And I think that's also a really good lesson for young LGBTQ kids out here in the sticks who are trying to, figure out how they're going to live their lives. And so I was just really adamant. I was like, I'm not set on race. I'm not set on any of these things, but please just keep the character gay because I really want him to be a gay kid.
Is the director, because he's aging him up, is he going to lean into that more? Because you would think that he
does lean into it more. He does lean into it more, and he also has changed. He did a brilliant job of changing the relationship between this kid at 18 versus who this kid would be at 12 and his relationship with his parents. Because at this point, the kid is 18. His parents, they may not know, but they know. They've got a pretty good idea. And he was able to bring in some scenes and some interactions between the character and his parents that I was not able to go into because of where the child was in their development. And he did an excellent job of it. And I, and it's all very subtle. It's nothing that's like beating you over the head with a hammer or anything. He did a really good job of it. And like I said, they're going into filming in a couple of weeks. They got a really good cast for it. And I just really wish I could go to West Virginia and be on set while it was happening. But
you had posted I think that they posted a picture of the creature and you had reposted it. It looks really cool. Really cool.
Yeah, it is a really cool build. I can't wait to see it with like the skin on it and stuff, because the last thing they posted, you very much have sort of the musculature and everything now. I can't wait to see what the skin and everything is going to look like. But yeah, I'm super excited because I wrote this creature feature and never once thought that somebody would say, oh yeah, let me adapt that. Let me make a film out of that. So yeah, I'm super excited to see. I told my parents about this story and they both laughed when I said giant catfish monster, but I was like, you guys laugh, but I grew up seeing pictures from people that we knew who hauled giant catfish out of lakes and stuff. And they're terrifying because real catfish, you can find them that are 300 pounds, like these huge, giant, massive creatures. Just make them man-eating and let them crawl out of the water, and that's terrifying to me.
Yeah, and I was going to ask if you had any personal experiences with catfish.
Oh yeah. I mean, I grew up in a family that fished a lot. Dad always had a boat. We would go out on the lake and go fishing. So yeah, I have seen my dad's hand sliced wide open when a catfish got him with a fin, because those fins are razor sharp in and of themselves, and the inside of a catfish's mouth is terrifying. I mean, it's not that there are teeth and stuff in there, but it's all razor sharp. Yeah. It's all like it will cut you up in ways that you just never expected. So yeah, I've been there.
And yet there's people sticking their arms down their mouths.
Dumbest people in the world. Sorry. Anybody who goes noodling or whatever you call it, where you're from. Yeah, no, that's scary stuff.
But also, God bless them, because, some fried up catfish is real good. Like they say on reservation dogs, catfish is life. You know?
I would always go fishing for catfish, but all I ever caught was crappie.
Look, I'm a big fan of crappie. I like that. I like the flavor of crappie. So yeah, I'm there with you.
Way more common, at least in the river we would fish in.
Oh, I was a child with ADHD. Fishing did not last long with me. I could not sit there for long.
Well, you know, when they take you out in a boat in the middle of nowhere, there's nowhere to go, man. So you either fish or
no, like they would bring me back after 10 minutes. They'd be like, this kid cannot, you know,
and
still.
The worst part, they would go night fishing. And so they would go out at like 8:30 at night and stay out and fish until 2:00 in the morning. Well, the problem is once it gets dark, you're out in the middle of a lake and Dad would light a couple of lanterns. And when you light a couple of lanterns in the middle of a dark lake, every insect in 15 miles lands on your boat and on you and crawls all over you. And it's like having a second skin that crawls constantly while you're out on the boat. So yeah, that was what my best day was the day that I was finally old enough to say, no, I'm not going out there. I'm just not doing it. I'm not taking part anymore.
That's your next short story. The second skin of insect. Korea, you just need to find the right part of the river, because when we would fish for catfish, and it was a river, not a boat, but you just cast across it and you use these little crappie jigs. And you reel them back in and it looks like a fish swimming. You would catch a fish every cast. Cast. They'd be crappie. They wouldn't be catfish. I heard that catfish, you would have to like let the current take the lure underneath the bank. Yeah, I don't know.
Take it down closer to the bottom.
Yeah,
for that bottom feeder.
No. The crappie were more fun to catch because I have a little bit of ADHD too. So I like the instant gratification of feeling the nibble.
I can't sit that long. Suntanning, can't do it. Fishing, can't do it. Like I used to get
you're fine
back.
with movies.
There's stuff going on.
Yeah. You're being entertained.
But even then, even sitting down during this podcast, James, how many times do you yell at me for like not tapping my foot, but shaking my leg so that it moves my mic? Like,
yeah. If you ever hear that, this right here, I don't even know if you can hear that on mine because I have a good windscreen. Yeah. I'm always on the guys about that, kicking their mic stands.
So who's kicking their mic stands? Oh, I did drink more than half a bang by the 15-minute mark. So
I actually wish I could go fishing again. I used to do a lot of that, both with my dad, and I used to fish at my old summer camp, actually in New Hampshire. And that was fun too, because we got to make our own fishing rods. It was just, you put
the full camp experience.
Yeah, you build your own rod with nothing but a stick and some twine and some hooks.
Yeah.
But I actually caught some fish with it. I can't remember really what kinds, but also I was attacked by a snapping turtle, so that was an experience.
That would do it. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. There are so many things under the water that are scary.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean, writing this story about, blind catfish that basically, crawl up out of the depths of a dark lake in a cave was not a stretch of the imagination at all, because I could totally see it happening.
The camp that I would go to, it was like right off, you could literally see the freeway from it. So there was it was not out in the remote woods or anything, but there was like a lake that actually was fed by the ocean, because this is San Diego. And there was a rumor, there was a sandbar way out in this lake. And there was a rumor that out by the sandbar, there lived a shark. So, and I think this was the counselors trying to tell us to not take the kayaks way the fuck out to that sandbar because there was a shark out there. But I think they just didn't want to have to keep an eye on us way the hell out there. Stay near the pier, stay near over here.
Yeah.
And there was one side of the dock that we couldn't go on because that's what led to the ocean. They were afraid we'd get sucked out. Oh yeah. Camp is fun. Even city camp.
Oh yeah. And the treacherous or the dangers of fishing.
I will say this. I like ice fishing, because ice fishing, there's like a big layer between you and the water. So you can be an ADHD little, shit like I was, and like still like not disturb the fish as much, So
let me tell you something, Jonathan. That's too cold. There's just no reason. There's just no reason to be out in that kind of weather.
I get it.
I am a Texan.
Yeah.
I just don't do the cold if I can help it.
I get it. You're a Texan. I'm a New Englander. I grew up on a power grid that could handle the cold.
Exactly.
We didn't fear
Lucky
the winters
bastards.
as much.
Now, when we get on tangents about camp and ice fishing, that's when you know that it's time to go. So we're going to wrap this up. Waylon, where can everybody find you and see what you've got coming out next on the socials?
You can follow me on Twitter at WaylonVox1. I have the most boring Instagram of all time. The name is just Waylon.Jordan. You'll find me there on Instagram. And also you can check out my website, which is wdalejordan.com. And you'll find that's where I post. I do blogs, but I also, sometimes I'll post just short stories that I don't have a home for, things like that. So there are sometimes things that you can read over there that are a lot of fun, and also make announcements for upcoming books. I will say I have a longer horror novel, a full novel that is coming out from Off Limits Press next year. It's called Taking Possession, and it takes place in an old antique store, and there's a haunted mirror, and there's probably the most sadistic character that I've ever written in my life, and it's something to look forward to.
All right. Yeah.
Antique store, haunted mirror. Sign me up. That's some return from the grave amicus shit right there.
Oh yeah. I had a lot of fun writing that one.
So everybody go out and check out The Stop. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it. I guess we're working on more digital platforms, but
yes, I'm working on more digital platforms, and I'm also working on the audiobook.
So W. Dale Jordan, The Stop. Keep your eye out for Worst Laid Plans.
Yes, Worst Laid Plans.
Keep your eye out for Worst Laid Plans, the anthology film, or you can just buy the anthology book too and get all the other stories. How many of the stories out of the book, how many are in the book, and how many got chosen for the film?
I think there were like 13 or 14 stories in the book. It's less than 5. I want to say it's like 4 or 5 stories that are actually being adapted.
All right. So you're in like the upper, 30%.
Top tier.
Nice.
How can you say no to a giant blind catfish eating people?
I can see the appeal to the director of that. So yeah, so check out The Stop and Worst Laid Plans, and keep an eye out for Worst Laid Plans, the movie. Our theme song is by Restless Spirit, so go and check them out. They're on the move now that the world is opening back up too, so that'll be great. Chris Fisher does our artwork. He has been posting some shots from his Rogue Bounty, so I guess his Star Wars fan film is still happening.
Yes,
so that's going to be cool if and when that sees the light of day. I'd say it's a when more than an if. Just knowing Chris, he'll hack away at it. It might take him a couple more years, but he'll keep hacking. For us, you can find us at the Eye on Horror Twitter, the iHorror Twitter, iHorror.com, the Eye on Horror Facebook, Instagram, anywhere Eye on Horror, you can find us. And so, and if you need to get a message to Waylon and don't want to rewind the 2 minutes to find out his contact, we can get it to him. So you can find him there too.
Yeah. And I love hearing from people who have read the book. I love hearing from people who want to talk about it. Hit me up. This is one of my favorite parts of being an author, is just talking to the people who have read it. So,
you better be expecting some messages from me once I finish in a couple of days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it, John.
Right on. Okay, cool. So until next time, we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. For me, James J. Edwards.
I'm Jacob Davison.
I'm Jonathan Correa.
Oh, and I'm Waylon Jordan.
Keep your eye on horror.